Hi, it's Penny here and welcome to another reading vlog. This week I have a couple of what I think are murder mystery type books to read. Actually, it's already Friday, and really to get back into the way that I like to do my reading vlogs, I would need to finish this weekend, but also that's probably not going to happen. And also I'm bad at vlogging enough for a weekend vlog to be very exciting, so who knows, we'll see what happens. Let me know though. I usually try to align my books with weeks, and then that also means that I can just do weekly vlogs that align with the books and people still get the whole reading experience of a whole book. But do you prefer just like to get someone's whole week and it doesn't matter if the books kind of spill over into the next vlog, or would you prefer the vlog to have the whole reading of a book? What's better? Anyway, I try to do both, but I'm not good at it. But the first book I am going to be picking up is My Father's Den. In My Father's Den. It's hiding under the bookmark. In My Father's Den by Maurice Gee. This is a New Zealand author, and this was also made into a film. All I really know about it is it's something about a schoolgirl turning up dead and her teacher is suspected. I do know this was made into a movie with a bunch of famous-ish actors, but I can't really get my hands on the movie. But I'm excited to read the book anyway, because I think it's kind of a New Zealand classic. The font in here is tiny though, so even though it's only 175 pages, I'm not sure how long it's going to take me to get through this. The other thing that I'm going to be reading is The Grimoire of Grave Fates. So this is an audiobook. I actually probably won't start it because I'm still finishing off my audiobook from last week. See the problem that I have? But hopefully I'll be able to start it soon because I am really excited about it. I think this was one where I heard the concept and I just thought it was cool. It's kind of a short story anthology set at this magic school, but then there's a murder, and I think all the different stories kind of linked together in terms of figuring out the murder mystery. I might have that wrong. It's been a long time since I read the synopsis, and I kind of like to not reread the synopsis so I don't like set up false expectations, but maybe because I've misremembered things, I am setting up false expectations. Anyway, those are the main two things that I'm going to try and read during this vlog. I will also be picking up some graphic novel things, probably along the way. Maybe. Honestly, I have no idea, but I'll let you know when I find out. Hello, so reading update. I have read very little, but we have got started on both the books I wanted to read. So firstly, this one I've only read about 30 pages, and basically it's just the setup. The prologue was mostly about this teacher's upbringing. His mother is quite devoutly religious in a kind of an over-the-top way, and then he also talks about his father kind of moving away from religion, and I'm wondering whether that is going to play kind of a bigger part in the story or not. And then we basically got actually right at the beginning is kind of like a news article about this girl's death and where her body was found. And then the first chapter was from this teacher's perspective as he finds out about her death. And this teacher has been spending a bunch of time with this young girl, kind of because she didn't have any friends or any direction and was interested in poetry like him. I'm a little bit worried, like it seems quite clear now that he probably didn't do it unless it's like a major twist. But I kind of think this is more of a literary book rather than a mystery book. So like, I don't really think there will be a twist. And I get the feeling this is going to be a story about like this man being unjustly accused because he was spending time with this young girl, but like also like, I'm not sure. Am I actually in the mood to read a story of a teacher spending time with his teenage student and like trying to justify that as non-creepy? Is that what I want to read now, right now? I don't know, but I will keep reading this. It is, as I said, quite literary, which is less to my taste, but it isn't too hard to get through compared to some other books of this style that I've read. Then as well, I listened to the first chapter of The Grimoire of Grave Fates. So basically I set up an introduction to this magic school. It's one where it moves around regularly, so the students get to experience different cultures in different places, and it has this big message of being very inclusive school. But then we get the perspective of the first student in the first chapter, and it kind of seems like maybe it's all a little bit bullshit. But also what I've realized is, so each chapter is going to be from a different student's perspective, and then each chapter is also a different hour in the timeline. So we've started at 2 a.m. and then it's going to work through until the evening. Already there has been a murder of a professor, and so the first student that we kind of followed discovered the body. There's a few clues already, so we'll see whether we can work out what's going on as we read some more. The one downside of the audiobook is it doesn't say anywhere what author is each chapter, because I I believe each chapter is written by a different author, so I need to try and find a list, really. I'll be interested to see if it even feels like it's written by different authors or not. Anyway, I'm not far through that, but I will probably listen to it. My day's task is going to be emptying out this wardrobe here and basically reorganizing everything and sticking it back in. So while I do that, I might listen to my audiobook. Then as well, I did start reading a graphic novel last night. Actually, I finished it. And it was a reread, so that's the I Hate Fairyland graphic novel by Skottie Young. This is about this young girl. She gets pulled into Fairyland, and honestly, she 100% is having a terrible time when she gets there. She doesn't want to be there. They tell her you need to find the key and then you can leave. And then 27 years later, she still hasn't found the key. And she's just going around Fairyland, destroying everything. I really love just like the bright colors of the art and like that mix of like really awful violence and graphic content with like some really cute things. But I did find like as the story goes on, I think it lost structure. It seems like maybe the author had a plan for the beginning of the story and then just it was popular, he wanted to continue it, but didn't really have a direction. But I have discovered that there was actually a new volume released this year. So what a fluke that I've started my reread, and I'll pick up the second book. So this was the first and second volumes in this book. I'll pick up the next volumes, I guess, soonish. I have a bunch of other graphic novels out from the library, so I'm not sure how soon actually. But it'll be exciting to see whether the new volume does something exciting with it. Also, I did find that the book I was reading had like everything that I remembered from this story. So like, I kind of don't know what's in the next two volumes that I've already read, even though I've already read them. Anyway, I have lots of video editing to catch up on today, as well as emptying out this wardrobe. So I better go and do some stuff. Hello. So this lighting in here is probably atrocious, but this is where we are today. So you would have seen yesterday I did manage to clean out my wardrobe, and I also cleaned out my book trolley. I've been using it kind of as like an interim side table, and it's kind of just collected stuff that I'm really not using. So now it's only got stuff on it that I'm using all the time, and I pretty much have everything organized except for all the books on my bookshelf. So that's all that sorted. Today I'm actually at Jace's place. So if you don't know, I think I haven't mentioned it in a while. Jace's place is like a studio band rehearsal space. I used to practice here. It's a bit sad because the people who bought it are not musicians. So now we need to clear out more stuff than we would have. There was one person who would have used this for a music-y place, but it's going to become a boring business. So that's a bit sad. But anyway, we're here today cleaning out some final stuff. Actually, there'll be a few more trips for final stuff. It's kind of never ending, but I did want to update you on my reading. I don't think I've read any more of this, but I might read a little bit of it now while some guy's here doing something. As well, I did, hang on, I need my phone to see how far through I got. I did, while I was doing all that wardrobe cleaning yesterday, I did listen to the Grimoire of Grave Fates, and I am 30% through. It's quite interesting because as well as this teacher having been killed and everyone's kind of learning about that, there's also been like this voice in everyone's head, and it mentioned a prophecy. And what's interesting is like all of these students have some reason to believe that the prophecy is about them and that they are the chosen ones. So it's a lot of fun. I actually find it interesting. For the most part, it doesn't feel like it's written by different authors. The only thing that really makes it seem like that is there have been a couple of them that were written more like interview transcripts, which honestly doesn't work that well. When it's like fast-paced dialogue, it doesn't work that well in an audiobook form because they just have to keep saying the name of the person who's speaking. But like it still feels very cohesive. It doesn't really feel like it's written by different authors because it's not really individual stories. It's a cohesive story, I guess, written different bits by different people. Definitely different than anything else I've read before. I did read one other thing last night. I picked up volume 2 of The Promised Neverland. I have to say, like the pacing is glacial, which is kind of like Death Note. I do enjoy the way that it takes you through the logic. Actually, I haven't talked about that series at all in this vlog. I read the first volume, I think, in my last vlog. So it's about these orphans at this orphanage, and they discover that something strange is going on. You know, there's a reason why they've got ID numbers tattooed on their necks and all these other things, and they don't know anything about the world outside the orphanage. So we're learning about that very slowly, and there's people trying to kind of outfox each other, and the logic of that is really interesting, but it's slow. There was a bit of a betrayal, a bit of a a twisty turn, which was exciting, but again, like, still, we didn't get where I thought we were going to get, and I'm now wondering how many volumes it's going to take before we find out about the world outside the orphanage. But I guess we'll see what happens, and I guess that's all for now.
Pick it up from the top, hit restart. So far it's been so hard to live.
Hello, so I'm about halfway through both the books I'm reading. Actually, I'm halfway through 3 of the books that I'm reading. It's now 3. So I thought I would do a reading update, even though I'm absolutely freezing because I think, like, it's fake summer. It's so tricksy. It gives you beautiful sunny days, which are lovely, and then it just turns to crap. So anyway, reading. Firstly, let's talk about In My Father's Den. I'm now halfway through, as I said, and to be honest, I'm not really loving it. I kind of just hate that the story is focused on this guy rather than being focused on the girl that was murdered. And like, even the guy is so selfish and self-centered, and he's kind of trying to make out to himself like he's heartbroken, but he's not really. He's really still just thinking about himself. And as well, we're getting like a lot of his childhood, and it's kind of like this typical young boy coming of age story. It does turn out that he is friends with this girl's father, and also it seems like he first dated her mother. And I'm a little bit worried that this is heading in a quite creepy direction. But I guess we'll see. I do like the references to New Zealand places because this is set in Auckland, where I am. I've learnt that Wadestown or Wadesville, it's mentioned in here, is kind of based on Henderson over in West Auckland. It did mention the North Shore where I live, Takapuna, not far from me. So it's just nice, you know, to have characters in places that you know, even though I guess this is still set, like, it was written in 1972, so things have changed a lot since then. And as well, actually, so there's some lines in here that I really dislike, but I will admit some of them are probably just a sign of the times. Like, there's one bit where he's like, oh, it's so great that I learned to cook because that's really the only thing that meant I didn't need to live with a woman. Like, oh my god, learn to cook. You don't need a woman to do it for you. I roll my eyes so hard. But again, 1972, that's probably how everyone thought. Anyway, I guess the thing is, I'm not loving this. But as I said, it's a New Zealand classic, and I'm curious where it's going to go. I do actually wish now that I could watch the movie, because I've seen people really like it. And I think it must be different, because what would you like about this from a movie adaptation point of view? Like, I just don't get it. Anyway, the other thing that I've been reading is the Grimoire of Grave Fates. About halfway through, I am kind of liking it. However, firstly, I'm struggling to keep track of the characters a little bit. Partly, it's just because I'm old and my memory sucks. Also, it's because I'm old and most of the characters are dealing with teenage problems, teenage angst, and I am so far from those things now. I find them really hard to connect with. So I think if you are more a reader of those kind of things, then, or if you're a teen, you'll probably like this better and like find it easier to keep track of what's going on. But as well, because each of these is kind of like a short story, but within a bigger story, got a lot of weight for each chapter, because not only does it have to move along the main story, it also is trying to do its own little thing. And so I feel like we barely get introduced to the characters, and there's not really any time in that chapter to wrap up or like move along any of their personal issues. And if I'm going to be reading about teen angst, I want to get to the point where they like figure out how to deal with it emotionally, or like realize that it's not really important, or like something. I want it to go somewhere. I don't just want to read teen angst for the sake of teen angst, you know? And as well, I think like each character kind of has a completely different kind of magic to some degree, because in this world, like, magic is so connected to who you are. And this book is also focusing on diversity, which is cool. There's a lot of cool ideas being introduced, but do we get much of them? Not really. Some of the authors are definitely doing better with it than others, but like, I'm enjoying it, but also I'm feeling frustrated that I'm not getting more from it than it's giving me, you know? And then I guess continuing this theme of halfway through not necessarily loving it, I picked up the second volume of Cucumber Quest. If you watched my last vlog, you know I read the first volume and I absolutely loved it. 5 stars, best thing I read in ages, made me so happy. It's just a really gorgeous graphic novel series about these rabbits. This young boy rabbit really just wants to go to school and learn magic, but instead his parents force him to go on this quest to save the world, even though his younger sister really would much prefer to be the hero and go on the quest. And the first one was just so quirky and humorous, and like the art is beautiful. And the second volume, like, I really wanted to love it. And I think it's fine, but it's not as funny. The plot's not as good. There's some new characters introduced, and it's just not doing as much. It's not making me laugh as much. It is still really cute. There are some funny parts. I really love the giant squid that's on the cover, the best character. But the other new characters that have been introduced aren't really doing it for me, and it's just not progressing the plot as much as I think the first volume did. And I think as well, like, the main thing that's happening in the second volume is that our hero has met up with this princess, and she's really annoying me. Basically, she has trained her whole life to learn about this legendary hero that was going to arrive and how to tell him everything he needs to do, and then she's just constantly like, I don't remember. Seriously, so frustrating. Anyway, I still have very high hopes for that series. I still love the first volume, but we'll see. I'm only about halfway through, so it could improve. Hello. So I feel like it's been a long time since I updated my vlog outside of the house, partly just because it's been winter and so I've been out of the house a lot less, but also like a lot of the time when I go out now, I don't go in my own car. In fact, I hardly ever use this car. We're probably going to sell it because we realize we just don't need 2 cars anymore. It's a bit sad to sell my little pink car, but surplus to requirements, costing me money I don't need to be spending. Anyway, I wanted to give you a reading update. I am about 3/4 of the way through both these books. This one, I can appreciate that this is well written, but the story is not really a story that I'm interested in, and as well, the main character, I think he's intentionally written as unlikable, but I also think, like, it's hard because this is written by, like, an old guy from the 70s. There's just plenty of, like, opinions he holds that I definitely don't agree with, and it's kind of hard to tell where's that line between the stuff that I really don't like that probably he doesn't agree with and the stuff that I don't like that he probably does agree with. I'm not sure, but there were definitely some parts in this I didn't like. There's one bit where basically he's taking advantage of this girl, pretending that he's a nice guy in his head, and then he's having sex with her and he thinks good girls don't have orgasms. Really, bro? I just, I don't like this guy. And the whole way that he's dealing with this family and this young girl, it's just, yeah, I don't know. But that said, like, I can see that there are some interesting things about the way this is written. I can see why as a classic and at the time it might have gotten some acclaim, but I'm not really enjoying it. And I just really struggle with the fact that, like, even though the triggering event in this book is this young girl's death, like, hardly anything in this book is about her or her death. So weird. Anyway, the other thing I've been reading is the Grimoire of Grave Fates. I am liking now, even though I'm still really struggling with keeping track of all the characters, there have been parts where characters whose heads I've already been in have been kind of like side characters in another character's story, and I really like how they're like all interwoven. It's not as interwoven as I would like it to be, but there's definitely been cases where in one person's perspective you get a clue and you think, oh, what does that mean? And then in a later one you find out what it means and it wasn't exactly what you thought, which I do like that. I really think this book would be much better enjoyed, probably physically. I don't really like the audiobook narrator, even though I know that she is one that a lot of people do really love. She's not to my preference. But also I think it'd be better just physically because you could take notes a lot more easily and, like, keep better track of what's going on. And, like, I kind of had the intention to do that, and I was doing that when I was listening to it at home. But when you're listening to it while you're out and about, it's just not convenient to stop and write down some little notes about what's happening. But anyway, I am enjoying it. I might actually finish it off today because Jace has gone back to his place today to sort out some stuff, and so I'm kind of home alone, so that means I can just listen to my audiobook while I'm getting shit done. And, like, I'm not that far off the end of this. I think I could probably just blast through it, which actually I just want to blast through it and be done with it. So maybe I will update you again later today. Maybe.
Lazy Sunday mornings, hiding under covers. I don't mind staying in with you.
Look, hello, so my neighbours are once again cutting down all their trees. It's like they just do it almost every day. It's great fun. Anyway, let's try and update this vlog in between bouts of soaring. I have finished all the books I was reading. I realised I didn't update you on the second half of Cucumber Quest Volume 2, which I was reading the other day. I did, in fact, like the second half more, maybe not as much as I like the first volume still, which would be like such an impossibly high bar to beat, but I did end up really liking the second half. I think just the new characters that were being introduced weren't my favourite. The only character that I really liked in Volume 2 was Splashmaster, and so I was a little bit sad about the ending. Splashmaster is the octopus on the front, and he's just kind of dumb, but he's doing his best to be like an evil henchman, and I really liked him. And I think also he was the best source of comedy in this. I don't normally like funny books, but I really liked the humour in Cucumber Quest Volume 1, but Volume 2 wasn't quite there. I am still really hopeful for Volume 3, because Volume 2 was almost there and it got better, so maybe. Anyway, what else did I finish? I did finish In My Father's Den, and this, I guess the thing is, I wouldn't really recommend reading this unless you really like reading classics just for the sake of it, or like you really want to know about New Zealand authors. From what I've heard, I think Maurice Gee has probably written not necessarily better books, but just like books that would probably interest me more, like more children's books with a fantastical element maybe. But this, right at the end, it did actually turn into a bit of a thriller, which surprised me. I didn't think it was going to go there, but it did. And it was kind of an exciting ending, but it kind of came out of nowhere. And as well, I remember something I keep forgetting to mention is the main character's younger brother in this has Down syndrome, and the way that it deals with that is not great. So I think if you're at all sensitive to young people with disabilities being treated badly, this is not a great book to pick up. Just, I'm sure, again, that this is how things were dealt with at the time, but didn't like it. And I think that's just the whole theme of this. I recently read this book by Witi Ehumara, which is another older man, a Maori man in this case, but still. But this was written in 2003, and I thought the way that this dealt with certain issues was problematic, but this is worse, which I guess just goes to show that I'm glad I wasn't around in the 70s. I think we often romanticize that time, but there is plenty of stuff in here to remind you that it wasn't a good time. And I think just at its core, the fact that this book is all about this young girl being murdered and then the book is not about the young girl at all, it's just really weird. So, not my favourite. Maybe I'm glad I read it though. I do still think it's fairly well written for what it's doing. I just don't like what it's doing. The other thing that I finished is the Grimoire of Grave Fates, which is kind of the same but the complete opposite as well. So that one, like, I had a lot of fun with it. I really liked the ending and the way things came together, but still, even though it was fun, I don't think it's going to stick with me, just because even though we got lots of little bits of cool things, we didn't really get to go in depth on any of them. And I think people who just like lots of different characters could really like this, but like, I also think it'll leave you wanting more, because some of those characters could be really cool stories and then nothing. And some of the like magic that's introduced could have like a bigger, cooler story around it, but that's not what this book was about. So it was fun. I liked it, but it's probably not exactly what I was looking for, but like, at least all the issues and the diversity was all dealt with pretty well as compared to other books. So that did make it a lot more fun to read. Anyway, I guess that is my reading update for now. Let me know if you've got any thoughts about the books that I read in this video, or if you've been reading anything great lately. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.